Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes one wrong turn, one wrong door, one unexpected moment can change an entire life. Tonight, I'll tell you about a woman who walked into the wrong room and walked out with a future she never imagined. Sometimes life changes in the quietest, simplest, most unexpected moments. Not with thunder, not with warnings, but with a tiny mistake that seems insignificant at first. For this young woman, 26 years old and careful all her life, the turning point did not come from rebellion or wild choices. It came from confusion, walking down a hallway she'd walked down hundreds of times before. One wrong door, one unfamiliar room, one decision made in a moment of exhaustion and emotional vulnerability. She didn't know that this small, accidental choice would alter the course of her life forever. It wasn't a dramatic plan or an intentional action, just a single moment where caution slipped and life took over. That night didn't just change her circumstances, it changed her identity, her responsibilities, and her understanding of herself. But what makes this key point powerful is not the mistake itself. It's the truth that life often transforms in moments we don't see coming. People spend years planning their careers, budgeting their dreams, protecting their futures. Yet it only takes one unforeseen event to redirect their path. That's the paradox of life. The very things we try to control can collapse in seconds, while the things we never planned end up defining us. For her, this wrong decision became a moment that reshaped her emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. It shook her sense of safety, forced her to confront her values, and challenged her to grow in ways she never anticipated. One wrong choice didn't just disrupt her life, it forced her into a journey she never believed she was ready for. In those first days after the incident, she learned that when destiny shifts, the mind becomes its own battlefield. She experienced guilt, confusion, self-blame, and overthinking. Every hour was filled with what if, why me, and how did this happen? She replayed the moment countless times, wishing she could undo it, go back, or somehow erase the memory from existence. That is the cruel side of a wrong decision. It doesn't just change your circumstances. It takes over your thoughts, your sleep, your peace. She felt trapped between the life she had built and the life that was unfolding uncontrollably. Yet, even in that emotional storm, she began to understand something essential. A wrong decision can break you temporarily, but it can also build you if you learn to navigate its impact. The true transformation began when she accepted that what happened could not be undone. Acceptance is never easy, especially when the stakes are high and the consequences are life-changing. But acceptance is the doorway to growth. Through her discomfort, she discovered her resilience. Through her fear, she realized her strength. The situation humbled her, matured her, and forced her to confront parts of herself she had never explored before. She had to learn responsibility, not just to others, but to herself. She had to develop emotional intelligence to manage shame without letting it destroy her. She had to find courage in moments that felt hopeless. These are the unseen, internal changes that only difficult situations can bring. One wrong decision didn't just redirect her path. It activated a deeper version of who she truly was. As time passed, she also learned that wrong decisions often reveal truths about the people around us. When she finally gathered the courage to confess the situation to her boss, the man who had unknowingly become part of this faltering moment, she discovered something surprising: responsibility and maturity from someone she didn't expect it from. Instead of anger, judgment, or denial, he responded with calmness and a willingness to understand. This taught her another profound lesson. Sometimes a wrong decision can reveal hidden strengths in the people we least expect. It can show us who is reliable, who is compassionate, and who is capable of stepping up when situations turn complicated. The incident didn't only change her life, it revealed the character of others. And that revelation became just as important as the event itself. In the end, what began as a simple mistake evolved into a life-changing turning point. It wasn't the wrong door that shaped her fate, but the choices she made afterward. This single, accidental moment forced her to evolve from a cautious young woman into someone more aware, more courageous, and more prepared for the unpredictable nature of life. It taught her that control is an illusion, that destiny can shift in an instant, and that the true test of strength lies not in avoiding mistakes, but in confronting them with honesty and courage. This key point stands as a reminder to all of us. A wrong decision may change your life, but it doesn't have to ruin it. It can become the first chapter of a transformation you never saw coming. Fear is one of the most powerful forces in the human mind. It convinces us that staying quiet is safer than speaking up, that hiding is easier than facing reality, and that avoiding consequences will somehow make them disappear. After the faltering incident with her boss, this young woman fell into fear so deeply that it felt like a shadow following her everywhere. She feared judgment. She feared rejection. She feared losing her job, ruining her reputation, disappointing her family, and being blamed for something she never intended. Fear whispered that silence was the best way to survive. But what she didn't realize was that fear doesn't protect, it paralyzes. It freezes life instead of allowing it to move forward. Every day she stayed silent. Fear tightened its grip on her, reminding her of everything she might lose instead of everything she could gain by confronting the truth. As the days passed, her fear became heavier than the situation itself. She began avoiding her boss, skipping conversations, and isolating herself from coworkers. She would stare at her reflection, feeling like she was carrying a secret too heavy for her young shoulders. Fear makes the mind exaggerate possibilities, turning small anxieties into monsters that feel impossible to defeat. She imagined scenarios where she would be humiliated, fired, called irresponsible, or judged by society. These images weren't based in reality. They were created by fear. And that's the dangerous part. Fear doesn't require evidence. It only needs imagination. Before she knew it, her fear had built a cage around her, and she was living inside it, unable to breathe freely. That is when she realized something crucial. Fear doesn't stop consequences. It only prolongs suffering. The turning point came when she recognized that running from the truth was exhausting her. She could no longer focus at work. She could no longer sleep peacefully at night. Her life felt like it was stuck. Not moving forward, not going backward. Just trapped in uncertainty. Fear had offered her no protection, only pressure. That's when she began understanding the true meaning of courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite fear. It is choosing to face the unknown instead of letting it consume you. For her, courage began in small moments, standing straighter, breathing deeper, telling herself she deserved clarity, not chaos. She realized that confronting the truth might hurt, but living in fear was hurting her far more. And so, she took the first step toward reclaiming her life. She decided she would talk to her boss. Even the thought of that conversation terrified her. Her hands shook, her heart raced, and her mind kept trying to convince her to delay it again. But that's what courage looks like, choosing honesty even when every muscle in your body wants to run. When she finally approached her boss, she expected anger, disappointment, or denial. Instead, she found something unexpected, understanding. Her voice trembled as she shared everything, the confusion, the mistake, the fear, and finally, the truth about her pregnancy. But she got through the conversation without collapsing, without hiding, without running. And at that moment, she discovered something powerful. Fear had lied to her. It had convinced her that facing the truth would destroy her, when in reality, facing the truth was the first step toward healing. Her courage changed everything. Instead of being judged, she was met with responsibility and support. Her boss didn't reject her or accuse her. He took accountability. This response taught her a life-changing lesson. Courage doesn't guarantee perfect outcomes, but it opens doors fear keeps locked. Courage gives people a chance to step up, to show their humanity, and to prove their integrity. Had she continued to hide, she would have robbed herself of the clarity and support she eventually received. She would have remained trapped in assumptions created by fear. Instead, her courage created space for open communication, mutual understanding, and shared responsibility. The moment she chose courage, her life began to move forward again. In the end, she realized that fear had never kept her safe. It had only kept her silent. Fear had made her smaller, weaker, and more confused. But courage expanded her. Courage gave her clarity. Courage helped her understand that she was stronger than she believed. Fear tries to protect us from pain, but ends up protecting us from growth. Courage exposes us to the truth, but gives us the strength to survive it. This became one of the most valuable lessons of her journey. Fear builds walls, but courage builds paths. And sometimes, the path created by courage leads to a future far better than anything fear could have ever protected. Honesty is often described as simple, but in reality, it is one of the hardest choices a person can make, especially when the truth carries weight, consequences, and emotional risk. For this young woman, honesty became the turning point that separated chaos from clarity. After discovering she was pregnant, her world felt as if it had collapsed overnight. She carried not only the shock of the situation, but also the burden of secrecy. Every day she hid the truth. The crisis grew bigger in her mind. The fear of revealing something so deeply personal made her question whether honesty was worth the emotional cost. But healing cannot begin until truth is spoken. And so, she slowly began to realize that honesty was not her enemy. It was her escape route from the storm she was drowning in. The crisis intensified the longer she kept it hidden. Suppressed truth becomes a heavy weight, and silence replaced peace with anxiety. She found herself declining invitations at work, avoiding eye contact, and losing confidence in tasks she once performed with ease. Her mind was constantly battling itself, one side insisting that hiding the truth would protect her, and the other reminding her that lies only delay the inevitable. She rehearsed conversations in her head, imagining anger, disbelief, or betrayal. These imagined outcomes made her avoid the truth longer, making her feel isolated even in a room full of people. But the more she avoided honesty, the more the crisis controlled her life. She realized that honesty wasn't a punishment. It was the only way to regain control of her own story. When she finally made the decision to tell her boss the truth, it wasn't because she was no longer scared. She was terrified. Her voice trembled, her palms sweated, and her mind raced with doubts. But she also knew that dishonesty would eventually break her. So, she chose bravery through honesty instead of false safety through silence. The moment she began speaking, explaining the confusion, the accidental encounter, and the unexpected pregnancy, she felt something shift inside her. Even though she feared how he might react, she felt lighter with each word spoken. Honesty had begun its quiet work, lifting the weight off her heart, giving her a sense of dignity, and allowing her to face the reality she had been avoiding. It was the first moment she felt she might actually survive the situation. His reaction taught her a lesson she would carry for the rest of her life. Honesty gives people the chance to do the right thing. If she had continued hiding, she would have never known whether he would support her or abandon her. But by being truthful, she allowed him the opportunity to take responsibility, to offer understanding, and to respond with maturity. Surprisingly, he did not react with anger or blame. He listened. He acknowledged his part in what happened. He didn't try to escape the responsibility or accuse her. The crisis she had feared for weeks suddenly felt more manageable. It showed her that honesty doesn't just transform situations. It transforms relationships. It builds foundations of trust where fear once stood. This experience also changed her relationship with herself. Honesty demands inner strength, and once she faced the truth, she discovered a confidence she didn't know she had. She learned that telling the truth does not make you weak. Carrying lies does. she learned that honesty, even when painful, brings clarity that allows solutions to appear. And she learned that the truth, no matter how complicated, gives you power over your own story. Her honesty allowed her to see that she was not alone, that the crisis was not unmanageable, and that she could face the consequences with dignity. Most importantly, honesty relieved her of the emotional burden she had been carrying silently. She understood then that the truth may shake your world, but lies can destroy it completely. By embracing honesty, she turned what felt like a hopeless crisis into a situation that could be handled with maturity, communication, and shared accountability. The truth opened a door to practical solutions, discussions about responsibility, future plans, and emotional support. It also allowed her to stand on solid ground rather than sinking into fear and secrecy. Her journey showed that honesty is not just a moral value. It is a survival tool. It can turn confusion into clarity, guilt into courage, and isolation into understanding. And in her case, honesty transformed an overwhelming crisis into a new path forward, proving that truth, even when difficult, is often the beginning of healing. Responsibility is a rare quality because it requires maturity, humility, and the courage to face consequences without looking for excuses. In moments of crisis, most people instinctively search for someone to blame. It feels easier, safer, and emotionally comforting. But blame never fixes anything. It only shifts guilt around like a shadow that refuses to settle. For this young woman, the weeks following the incident were filled with fear that she would be blamed for everything. Blamed for entering the wrong room, blamed for being vulnerable, blamed for getting pregnant. The weight of that fear made her believe she would have to carry the entire burden alone. But what changed her life wasn't just honesty. It was witnessing the power of responsibility, both within herself and from the man who unexpectedly became part of a crossroads. When she finally told her boss the truth, she expected blame to fall on her like a storm. She imagined him accusing her of carelessness, questioning her intentions, or distancing himself to protect his reputation. But instead, he surprised her with maturity. Instead of reacting impulsively, he listened, truly listened, to her confusion, her fear, and her struggle. And then he did something many people never do. He took responsibility for his part. He did not say it was her fault. He did not argue that she should have known better. He did not try to escape. His calmness and acceptance of responsibility showed her that real character is revealed when circumstances are difficult, not when they are easy. And in that moment, she realized that blame would have destroyed them both, but responsibility allowed them to face the situation with dignity. This shift from blame to responsibility changed the energy of the entire situation. It transformed an emotionally overwhelming crisis into a manageable reality. When someone chooses responsibility, the problem stops growing and starts shrinking. Responsibility creates solutions. Blame creates divisions. Her boss's reaction taught her this truth far more clearly than any life lesson she had learned before. He acknowledged that he, too, had been part of the accidental encounter. He recognized that both of them had been vulnerable and unprepared for the consequences. And most importantly, he made it clear that he would not walk away now that the situation had become complicated. His decision not only gave her relief, but also gave her strength. It reminded her that she was not alone and that shared mistakes require shared responsibility, not shame. At the same time, she learned a deeper lesson about her own responsibility. Accepting responsibility does not mean accepting blame. It means accepting reality. She took responsibility for her feelings, her fears, and her next steps. She realized that hiding the truth, running from the situation, or hoping it would disappear would only make things harder. By choosing to speak up, she had already taken an enormous step toward taking responsibility for her life. It was not easy. She battled guilt, confusion, and self-doubt. But she also understood that responsibility is not about punishing yourself. It is about owning your choices and deciding what to do next with courage. Through this difficult experience, she learned that maturity is defined not by perfection, but by the willingness to face imperfection with honesty. What stood out most was how responsibility deepened the respect between them. Instead of falling into accusations, they began discussing the future with clarity. Responsibility allowed them to communicate, plan, and support each other. They talked about emotional needs, practical decisions, and how to navigate the unexpected situation respectfully. Responsibility opened doors that blame would have slammed shut. It built a bridge between them instead of creating distance. It allowed them to talk like adults instead of reacting like frightened strangers. If either of them had chosen blame, everything would have collapsed. But because both of them stepped into responsibility, her through honesty and him through maturity, the crisis slowly transformed into something they could handle. Ultimately, this experience revealed a profound truth. Blame keeps people stuck, but responsibility moves people forward. Blame is easy but destructive. Responsibility is hard but healing. This young woman discovered that taking responsibility for her life gave her strength she never realized she had. And witnessing responsibility from her boss gave her hope that even the most complicated situations can be faced with integrity. Responsibility doesn't erase the past. It simply gives you the power to shape the future. And in her story, responsibility became the turning point that allowed both of them to rise above fear, face the truth, and prepare for whatever came next with courage instead of chaos. Support is something we often expect from familiar faces, family, close friends, people who have walked beside us for years. But life rarely follows the script we imagine. Sometimes, the people we expect the least become the pillars we depend on the most. For this young woman, the moment she discovered she was pregnant left her feeling utterly alone. She feared judgment, shame, and disappointment. She imagined her world shrinking, not expanding. Yet, as the truth unfolded, she realized that support doesn't always arrive from predictable sources. Sometimes it comes from the very person you feared would reject you. In her case, support came from someone she respected professionally, but had never imagined she could lean on personally, her boss. The moment she told him the truth, she braced herself for anger, avoidance, or even denial. Instead, she was met with calmness, understanding, and an unexpected willingness to stand with her through the storm. His reaction was not what she had mentally prepared for. It was far gentler, far more humane. He didn't question her integrity or try to distance himself from the situation. He didn't recoil or treat her as an inconvenience. Instead, he recognized her vulnerability and responded with maturity. This support was unexpected because power dynamics in workplaces often create fear, hesitation, and misunderstanding. Yet here he was, meeting her honesty with responsibility and offering her the reassurance she had been desperately missing. His support didn't just ease her burden. It changed her perception of what support really looks like. She learned that support isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's a calm conversation, a promise kept, or simply someone saying, "You're not alone in this." Support can be silent strength, an energy that steadies you when your world feels unstable. She had entered that conversation expecting her life to fall apart, but instead, she walked away feeling seen, supported, less ashamed, less scared, and she realized something powerful. Sometimes the people you fear telling the truth to are the ones who surprise you the most with their compassion. As days passed, his support continued in subtle ways. He checked on her emotional well-being, asked if she needed anything, and made sure she didn't feel isolated. He didn't force decisions on her or attempt to dictate the future. Instead, he listened, truly listened, to her concerns, her fears, and the overwhelming uncertainty she felt. His support wasn't about control, it was about partnership. And through his actions, she learned that support doesn't always mean solving problems. Sometimes, It simply means creating space for someone to breathe. Knowing she wasn't carrying the burden alone gave her the strength to think clearly, make sound decisions, and regain a sense of stability. This experience also changed her understanding of human relationships. She realized that life sometimes introduces unexpected connections to guide us through our most difficult chapters. While she had feared judgment from loved ones, the person who unexpectedly became her emotional anchor was the man she least expected to rely on. It taught her that support is not limited by roles, titles, or assumptions. It can come from colleagues, acquaintances, or even strangers who decide to show kindness at the right moment. Support doesn't always come in the form of advice or solutions. It can come in the form of patience, empathy, and shared responsibility. Ultimately, this chapter of her life taught her that support is not about perfection but presence. It doesn't matter who the person is. What matters is that they choose to stand with you when the ground beneath you feels unsteady. She discovered that the right support can transform fear into courage, confusion into clarity, and loneliness into resilience. Her boss's unexpected support reshaped her understanding of trust and reminded her that human beings, even in complicated situations, are capable of extraordinary compassion. And in her most vulnerable moment, it was this unexpected support that helped her stay grounded, hopeful, and strong enough to face whatever came next. Life has a way of turning painful chapters into powerful transformations, but this truth is often invisible when we are standing in the middle of chaos. For this young woman, her unexpected pregnancy initially felt like the end of every plan she had carefully built for herself. At 26, she had been cautious, responsible, and committed to protecting her future. One accidental moment shattered her sense of control, leaving her convinced she had ruined everything. But what she didn't realize at the time was that hidden within this mistake was something far greater than fear, a chance for a new beginning. Mistakes may shake us, confuse us, and break us open, but they also plant seeds of growth we cannot yet see. And this situation, as overwhelming as it was, soon became the turning point that reshaped her entire life. In the early days, she could only see the negative consequences. The shock of the pregnancy consumed her thoughts. She worried about her career, her reputation, her finances, and the reactions of people around her. She felt unprepared, vulnerable, and emotionally fragile. It was easy for her to believe that this one mistake had derailed her entire life path. But slowly, as she took steps toward honesty, responsibility, and acceptance, she began to notice something unexpected. She was becoming stronger. She was learning things about herself that she would never have discovered otherwise. Every tear, every fear, every difficult conversation was shaping her into someone more resilient, more aware, and more capable. The mistake hadn't ended her life. It had revealed her ability to rebuild it. One of the most powerful shifts occurred when she stopped viewing the situation as a punishment and started seeing it as an awakening. Painful experiences often force us to confront parts of ourselves that comfort never touches. Through this mistake, she learned courage. She learned vulnerability. She learned how to navigate uncertainty without collapsing. She learned to ask for help, to communicate her needs, and to stand firm in the truth even when she felt shaken. These lessons were not easy, but they were transformative. Her mistake became a mirror, reflecting the strength and emotional depth she never knew she possessed. In this way, the crisis did not destroy her identity, it expanded it. As the months unfolded, she also began to see beauty where she once saw disaster. The pregnancy, which initially felt like a symbol of failure, slowly began to feel like a symbol of possibility. The tiny life growing inside her made her reconsider what beginning truly means. Suddenly, she wasn't just living for herself. She was preparing to welcome a future she had never imagined. She found herself dreaming of new goals, new priorities, and a new version of herself capable of nurturing and protecting another human being. The idea of motherhood though unexpected, began to soften her heart and reshape her understanding of love, responsibility, and purpose. What she once called a mistake was turning into a life-changing blessing, one that gave her new direction and meaning. What made this transformation even more profound was the support she received from her boss, who also embraced the situation with responsibility and maturity. His willingness to step up, communicate, and share the emotional weight allowed her to view the experience not as a solitary struggle, but as a shared journey. Together, they navigated uncertainties, discussed possibilities, and slowly rebuilt a sense of stability around the situation. This support helped her realize that beginnings are not defined by perfection. They are defined by strength, honesty, and collaboration. Her new beginning was not just about becoming a mother, but about stepping into a version of herself shaped by courage rather than fear. In the end, she discovered a truth that would stay with her forever. Mistakes are not the end of the story. They are the beginning of a different one. They redirect us, teach us, humble us, and open doors to new chapters we never planned for. The moment she accepted this truth, her perspective shifted from regret to growth. She realized that life's greatest transformations often come from the moments we never wanted to experience. And even though the journey was challenging, it led her to a future filled with new possibilities. Proof that every mistake carries the seed of a new beginning, waiting to grow into something extraordinary. So when we look at this young woman's journey, her fear, her honesty, her courage, her unexpected support, and her transformation, we see more than a mistake. We see a human being discovering her strength in the middle of chaos. We see how a single moment, even one she never intended, became the doorway to growth she never imagined. And we see that life does not judge us by the errors we make, but by the bravery with which we rise after them. Her story reminds us that no one is perfect. We all stumble, we all fall, and we all face moments that terrify us. But what defines us is not the fall, it is the choice we make afterward. Do we hide? Do we blame? Do we run? Or do we gather every ounce of courage we have and choose to grow? Because sometimes the moments we fear the most become the moments that shape us the most. And if she, a 26-year-old woman who walked into the wrong room and watched her life flip upside down overnight, could find strength, support, responsibility, and a new beginning in the middle of a storm, then so can you. So can all of us. In the end, her story is not about the mistake. It is about the transformation that followed. It is about the unexpected journey that led her to a future she never planned, but eventually embraced with courage, maturity, and hope. And maybe that's the lesson life has been trying to teach us all along. Your greatest challenges can become your greatest turning points. If you choose to rise,